Hi everyone, this is Frank DeMora with the Last Chronicles of Planet Earth. And if you just discovered my YouTube channel, I invite you to go to my website, which you see, BibleProphecyMan.com. And when you're there, just scroll down, you'll be able to click this link right here, this yellow one, and you'll be able to access my documentary on Bible prophecy and current events for free today. Now I'm going to get into two major prophecies that are in relation to the last days. These are very, very specific prophecies that shows us when they happen that we're definitely very, very, very close to the beginning of the 7-year tribulation. Now, in Zechariah 12:3, this is what it says here. I'll mark it in the blue. It says, "And in that day I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people." Notice it says all people, not just for the Arabs, not just for the Palestinians, but for everyone. It says, "All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces." So anybody that goes to Israel and they burden themselves over what's going on in Israel, Jerusalem, and over East Jerusalem where the holy sites are, then the Lord specifically tells us that anybody who burdens themselves will be cut into pieces. Now, this is strong language. Then it goes on to say, "Though all the people of the earth are gathered together against it." So we know that in the last days, everybody is going to be coming against Israel in the last days. Now, obviously, this tells us what? This tells us that the Christians, the born-again Christians who are abiding in Christ, will be gone at this time, because if the Lord says that all the people will be coming against it, we know that the Christians would never be doing this. They would never come across or come against Israel. So that's another indication that the church will be gone at this time. They would have already been raptured to heaven, and they would be gone. And what we're seeing now are the earmarks of this prophecy coming to pass in the last days, where all of the nations are getting ready to come against Israel. Now, one of the nations that have been trying to eliminate Israel, working for it for a very, very long time, are the Palestinians. The Palestinians want East Jerusalem. They want Jerusalem. They lost it in the 1967 war. That's where the Dome of the Rock is, the holy site. And when you take a look at the PLO Charter, and you'll see it, Article 15, you'll see that in their charter, it even calls for the elimination of the Zionists in Palestine, or the elimination of Israel. That's what they're actually telling you. Now, some have said that since the Palestinian Charter was written, they've changed it, they altered it, and there's no more aims in there for the annihilation of Israel. Well, when you go down into this link, when you get to my site, you click that link, you'll be able to access to this, and this gives you information. You'll see Charter 15, or Article 15 right here, and we call for the liquidation of the Zionist presence of Palestine. And you'll see Article 19 and 22 that have similar verbiage to it, saying, essentially destroying Israel. And this article will tell you that the PLO Charter revision strategy, and you'll notice that when you read this article, that nothing was changed. There isn't any elimination of "we want to destroy Israel" in there. So if anybody says anything to the effect that the charter's been changed, it hasn't. And the Palestinians are still calling for the destruction of Israel. And so when they say that they're going to have a march to Jerusalem that's not going to be violent, that the hidden agenda behind the reason why they want to go into Jerusalem is violent in itself, because they're calling for the destruction of Israel. And all that they're trying to do is bring world attention against the Israelis, and essentially what they're doing is essentially what God showed us that the world was going to be doing already, and that was coming against Jerusalem, coming against the Israelis, burdening themselves over this city. And so when you go to this site, I'm gonna show you where it is here. You'll see a statement here by Ayatollah Khamenei, who is the spiritual leader. But when you go to this site, it talks about organizers on this march to Jerusalem vow no violence. And again, we saw this non-violence last year, March this time, when there was a march on Jerusalem, or a march on Israel back then. And of course, there was violence. And I would it's safe to guess by the actions of the Palestinians and the actions of the Arabs and their charter and whatnot, that there's going to be violence again if they do in fact march on the 30th of this month. Now, in this article, it talks about the global march to Jerusalem on the occasion of Land Day will take place on March 30th. Obviously, this is 2012. And it goes on to say who's involved. It says the Jordan, Lebanon, and the Palestinians, all of which, by the way, are mentioned in the Psalm 83. That's the war that hasn't been fulfilled yet. And we know that there's no doubt in my mind that all of these people want East Jerusalem back, and they're burdening themselves over Jerusalem, just like Zechariah said. So let me go back here, because it talks about the organizers are claiming that more than 700 institutions from 64 countries should support the initiative, directly or indirectly. Protests will also be held outside the Israeli embassies in various European and Arab countries. It appears no marchers will be leaving Egypt or Syria due to the volatile political climate in those countries. They're still feeling, these two countries are still feeling the repercussions of the Arab Spring, where there's uprising against their leaders, and so they're occupied right now, as they were not occupied last year, March. But there still may be an indication that some of the people from Egypt and Syria may still try to make an attempt to do this march on March 30th of this year. But let me go down, scroll down, and show you something of importance here. Now, you'll see this right here, and I'm going to go back to my site, and I'm going to, I'll show you why. But I'm just wanted to show you that it's there, and here is the quotes that I just took from there. It says, "We believe that the international community has failed and has not managed to force Israel to stop the Judaization of Jerusalem, the settlements, and the separation fence." Yaksen said, "Jerusalem is the key to both peace and war." Again, remembering those words of Zechariah 12:3, Jerusalem will become a burdensome stone. And obviously it is. And we're seeing articles like this in the news at least once or twice a week. It says, "We do not want Jerusalem to turn into a city of death, but the city of life for all people." Well, obviously, if you've been watching the news, you'll see that there have been bombings and there's been missile attacks against Israel. Last week there was over 400 missile attacks, and this is a strange way of calling for peace by the PLO. But keep in mind the Constitution, or their charter, if you will, says they need to destroy Israel, get them out of Palestine altogether, get them out of Jerusalem. Now, as far as the separation wall here, the separation fence, let me just show you this, because we do know that this war has not been taken place yet, and it is coming. And all the people that you just saw in this article that I'm reading have been mentioned in here. Of course, Egypt, they said, and Syria may not attempt the march because they're in problems right now, civil war amongst themselves just about. And what I needed to point out to you, that this war will happen, I believe, at the time when that they're talking about, this separation fence, will still be standing. In other words, we'll see these nations come against Israel, and I really believe it will because of Jerusalem. They'll try to take it back. And let me show you one thing right here. Let me go to my book. Now, in my book, I show you, this is the separation fence, or part of it, that they're talking about in the article that I just quoted from. I took this picture when I was in Israel in 2010. Now this separation fence expands 320 miles, about 25 foot high, and this is the one that they're talking about. But if you notice in the book of Ezekiel, it talks in Ezekiel about the fences and when the Ezekiel war is going to take place. And that Ezekiel war will happen after the Psalm 83 war. It says, in the 38th chapter of Ezekiel, we are told by God an attack would come against Israel in the last days. This future attack will come at a time when Israel does not have any walls, gates, or bars. Okay? In other words, the attack will come at a time when Israel will feel secure. This is what the sovereign Lord says on the day thoughts will come into your mind, and you will devise an evil scheme. You will say, I will invade a land of unwalled villages. I will attack a peaceful and unsuspecting people, all of them living without walls and without gates and bars. Ezekiel 38, 10, and 11. So, why am I showing you this? Well, when you go back now and you look at this, the news that is coming to us, and this march that is going to be taking place, we know that the separation wall is standing right now. And when the people from the Psalm 83 war attack Israel, and Israel defeats all of these people the same way they did in 1967, same way they did in 1973, and the same way they did the day after Israel became a nation again in 1948. May 14th, 1948, Israel became a nation. The next day, on the 15th, the first war that Israel had to fight for their life took place. So when this war takes place and Israel wins, the separation wall, I believe, the separation wall, let me get back here if I can. The separation wall that I just showed you from my book, those walls could come down at that time because Israel will then feel they're going to feel safe. They're going to feel, now that we've eliminated the enemies, we incorporated more land, they will feel safe, and it will be a setup for the next war, the Ezekiel 38 war, of which Israel won't have any bars, gates, or walls up at that time. Now, let me go down again. So you have another part of this article that I want to talk to you about is, obviously, when you read the Psalm 83, you'll see that Iran is not involved in here. But Iran is very influential. They're pushing for the Palestinians to attack. They're pushing for this march. And obviously, their supreme leader here, Khomeini, is pushing for this march. It says the Iranian spiritual leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, announced at the end of February that he supports the march on Jerusalem, as he believes Iran must openly support movements and groups acting against Israel. Like other Arab countries, Iran has also estimated a local organizing body to prepare for the marches. So they're preparing. Even though they're actually not in it, they're very, very influential pushing for this. And of course, another section of this article that you can clink to, it talks about who's going to be there. And it says, Yeksin denies that Iran is involved in funding the event, and they're talking about this march of March 30th. Funding the event, yet various media reports indicate that Tehran is supporting the march both in declarations, propaganda, and organizing the event. This raises doubts over the organizer's statement that the marches will not be violent in nature. And I'm going to show you that they were violent in nature last time, and they're violent in, I believe that they're going to be the same this time. It should be noticed that Hamas, which is in the Psalm 83 war, once you again look at all these nations here, you'll see that the Hamas is one of these groups. It says the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a group that just took over Egypt, and Of course, this is one of the reasons why they think that Egypt may not be marching, is because they're too busy with their killing each other in Egypt and trying to form a new government. But the Muslim Brotherhood has made statements about the elimination of Israel. So as far as being peaceful, they're about as peaceful as a Kershaw rocket. And of course, the Hezbollah is another group destined or claims that the Palestinian is theirs, and they also are working towards the elimination of Israel like the rest of these groups. And the Islamic Jihad in Lebanon. Of course, Lebanon is in the Psalm 83 war. You'll see it here under number 5. And again, you'll see it in number 9, where you have the Hezbollah and the Lebanese there in Lebanon. And so you have these radical groups that all are working for the same goal. That's for the destruction of Israel. So the event that we're going to see played out, or may be played out, I don't know for sure, but they're saying and they're working towards this, and I think if you had to take a guess, they are going to make an attempt again to do this, to bring national or international a focus on Jerusalem. And I believe that it's all part of fulfilling the prophecy. Now when you go down and you look at as far as the Zechariah prophecy, when all the nations are coming against Israel in the last days, you'll be able to click this link and you'll see nation after nation after nation having rallies about this situation, coming to or against Israel's position on East Jerusalem and the Palestinian people. And again, this is living proof that God's word is here already. The road to Zechariah has already been established, and we're getting closer and closer to the fulfillment of this. And we know when the exact completion of this will happen. And this will happen in the book of Revelation. If you read the book of Revelation, you'll see that Jesus Christ will be coming back in the last days, and it will be at the end of that tribulation. And that's when all of the people will be coming against, and they'll be going into Jerusalem. And you don't want to be here for that event. Now, this is another video that talks about the Intifada. And this Intifada is actually, it is a coming against Israel. And you'll see here on May 15th, 2011, that was last year when this Intifada went to go out. And they marched against Israel. The Nakba. The Palestinians say this is disaster when Israel became a nation again. And they've been working to get rid of Israel ever since. So last year was the third Intifada. And they're just showing you some of the preparations for the last march. And they're doing it again for the march this year.
Israeli troops clash with Palestinian protesters.
Israel was battling on multiple fronts. Hundreds were trying to break into Israel from Lebanon.
Nakba Day is officially marked on Sunday, but demonstrations linked to it started on Friday and have been going on all weekend.
U.S. and Israel are blaming Syria for starting these riots in northern Israel. President Assad trying to divert attention.
This is what's on the website. Judgment Day will be brought upon us only once the Muslims have killed all the Jews.
I hope you heard that, because that is the charter, more or less, of the Palestinians. Listen to this.
Judgment Day will be brought upon us only once the Muslims have killed all the Jews.
One man is dead and 17 people injured after a truck collided with vehicles and pedestrians in Tel Aviv on Sunday. Police say the driver was an Arab Israeli who's now under arrest.
So please watch the videos, and you'll see in some of these videos that the Palestinians in that Nakba of March 2011, the Israelis had to defend themselves. They were actually fired upon. They were belted with stones. And one of the things that any country would do if you had hundreds of thousands of people marching on your borders, you would defend your borders. I don't care what nation you're in. If you had, say, for example, you had 300,000 people flocking into Great Britain with the idea that they were going to take 10 Downing Street and destroy it, you would have your troops there protecting not only 10 Downing Street, where the Prime Minister lives, but the people of Great Britain. And to say that Israel doesn't have the right to protect themselves when the Palestinian organization wants to work for the elimination of Israel, and it has people behind it that are calling for the complete destruction of Israel, there's only one thing that can happen on March the 30th of 2012. That's more violence. I don't like the violence, but I do know that we're living in a world that's filled with violent people propagating violence almost every single day. And when you call for the elimination or the destruction of a complete nation, that's as violent as you're going to get. Hitler tried to do the same thing, and we saw his destruction. And so let everybody take lesson to what the Lord said in Zechariah 12:3, because if you come against this nation, Israel, you come against God. That's as simple as that. And if you choose to come against this Israel, Jerusalem, you're coming against God, and please note what will happen to you, because the Lord told us what will happen to you. You shall be cut in pieces. Anybody who comes against Israel, this is what will happen. Now, a lot of you are probably saying, well, God is love. How would he say this? God is love. But God set his plan for the nation Israel. He set the plan for the world, and he set the plan for every single person that lives in this world. And it comes down to this. Either you obey the Lord, you love the Lord, you love his word, and no matter what you think, you obey his word. And obey and understand and believe that he will carry out his words concerning Jerusalem. So if you want to become an enemy of God, burden yourselves over Jerusalem. And if you're from another country, and one of these countries, from Jordan, from Lebanon, from Egypt, from the Palestinians, who are going to march on God's people and head towards Jerusalem, you're going in not against the Jewish people, you're going in against God. Not a very good position to be taking. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens on March 30th. And I pray that someone who was thinking about marching against Israel would turn to the Lord and believe what the Lord tells us, because not only is March 30th coming, this March, but Psalm 83 is that much closer. Now, what happens after March 30th? When Israel repels everybody, is there a chance that the March 30th is supposed to be this peaceful march will turn into Psalm 83 war? There is that possibility. I'm not going to discount it. So everyone should be paying attention, just like the Lord said. Keep on the watch. He said it over and over again. So especially on March 13th or March 30th, let's watch and see what happens and see where the Lord takes us. And again, I invite you all to come to my prophecy site, where you can read all the documentation that shows you that everything that the Lord warned about the last days is in the process of being fulfilled, or already has been fulfilled. And there's only very few prophecies that are left to be fulfilled. And obviously the Zechariah and the Psalm 83 prophecies are two of those prophecies.